Well, hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Reopening the Parish. My name is John Poidevent, and I'm the Director of Programming for Parish Catalyst, and I'm so glad that you're with us today. There are many of you with us today. The response to this webinar has been unprecedented, as they like to say. We have had over 900 registrations from people in 500 parishes in 40 states around the country. There are 30 of you who've registered that work for a diocese or archdiocese, and there are people from 7 different countries joining us as well. So glad that you are with us. There is a lot of diversity represented, and we're all at different stages of this. There are some states that have been open for weeks. There are some that are not going to be open for months. But one thing we have in common is that we've all have to navigate this at some point, and under some different regulations. But hopefully from the pastors and leaders that you hear from today, you'll hear some ideas how you could handle this at your parish or your diocese. And we'll have some question and answers going on during this webinar. And then we'll also get back to you tomorrow with an email that has links to all the things that you hear discussed today, and ways that you can get in touch with these leaders and their parishes and the resources that they're mentioning. So as we get started, I want to go to a video that was produced by St. Anthony of Padua Parish in the Woodlands, Texas. They were part of one of our learning communities a few years ago, and they put together a 5-minute video to inform their parishioners about coming back to Mass. What is the experience going to be like for them? What they can expect? How they can register? They actually did registration for Masses, and also what they can expect from the parish in providing a safe environment for them. So let's take a look at that now.
Welcome to St. Anthony of Padua Catholic Church. As we reopen our church in phases, we want to cover a few procedures that will help keep you and those around you safe during Mass. Before you arrive for Mass, we ask that you wash your hands for 20 seconds at home. For those 10 and up, face coverings are required on our campus and during Mass. The cry rooms and nurseries are closed. Bring your own hand sanitizer that can be used before receiving Holy Communion. Do not bring items that contain bleach into the sanctuary, as this will damage the pews. When you arrive to our campus, if you are 10 and up, please place your mask over your face as you are exiting your vehicle. Arrive 20 to 30 minutes before Mass begins to stand in line. Please print or have your confirmation email pulled up on your phone to show staff when entering. This will speed up the process for all. The main doors of the church will open 15 minutes prior to the start of Mass. Our parish staff will seat your household similar to boarding an airplane. The church will be seated to fill the open pews from front to back. Every other pew will be closed and marked by red tape on the floor. You may be sharing a pew with another household, but a social distance of 6 feet is required between the households. The center sections will be seated first, followed by the 2 transepts. There will be no seating in the choir loft, narthex, or cry rooms. If someone arrives without having a reserved seat, they will be asked to stand in a standby line. If there is extra seating after the start of Mass, they will be granted entrance and a reserved seat will be forfeited. Please don't be late to Mass, as your seats could be given away. Procedures during Mass. Please keep your face mask on for the duration of the liturgy. There is to be no physical contact between households at the sign of peace or hand-holding during the Lord's Prayer. Baskets will not be passed during offertory. You will be able to place your weekly gift in a basket as you exit the church, but we strongly encourage online giving through PushPay. Procedures for the reception of Holy Communion. Cardinal DiNardo has mandated that communion not be offered on the tongue under any circumstance for the time being. The precious blood will not be offered to the congregation. Use of personal hand sanitizer before communion is strongly encouraged. There will be a single communion line in the center of each main aisle. Parish staff will assist in ushering each section. When your pew is ushered to receive communion, stand up and move to the center of the main aisle in your section. Please maintain social distance between you and the communicants in front and behind you. When you step up to the priest to receive communion, keep your mask on. After the priest has offered you communion in the hand, step to the side, remove your mask, and receive the precious body of Christ. After you've received the Eucharist, place your mask back on and go back to your seat. Departure procedures. After the final blessing, parishioners must remain in their pew. Pews will be dismissed in an orderly fashion, starting in the rear of the church and then moving forward. This will be similar to how you exit an airplane. You must exit your pew when prompted. Private prayer is not available after Sunday Masses to allow the church to be reset and disinfected for the next Mass. All exits of the church will be utilized during departure. You can drop your weekly offertory as you depart. Clergy will not shake hands in the piazza. They will wave as you exit. Please do not congregate outside, but head directly to your vehicle to allow the next Mass to start on time. Church cleaning procedures. We will continue to implement cleanliness and sanitization practices, including cleaning pews regularly. Disinfecting bathrooms, door handles, and other frequently touched surfaces occur throughout the day. Parish staff will be required to wear face masks, wash hands, and will be screened for COVID-19 symptoms. You are reminded to follow CDC recommendations regarding your own health. If you fall into an at-risk category, please stay at home and join us by live stream.
Dear St. Anthony's family, this is a moment that we've been waiting for a long time. I thank you for your kind patience and all your prayerful support. I ask that you pay close attention to the protocols listed in the beginning of this video. And if we all do that, we look forward one day when we can fully open our church. Well, I look forward to seeing you this weekend or very soon.
So that's quite a thorough video, isn't it? You can see that and think, wow, we don't have the resources to do that. We don't have the production team. We don't have the technology. But I want you to remember this. If someone at your parish has an iPhone, you have the resources to do a video. You have an HD video recording device in your hands. And if you're watching TV these days, all kinds of premier TV shows and networks are doing things very low production, lo-fi. Jimmy Fallon is producing his show at home. His wife is operating the iPhone camera, and his kids are doing artwork to illustrate things. You can create a fun, authentic video from your parish with an iPhone that you could do that would accomplish the same purpose as the one that you just watched. But we're going to go to Mike Gormley now. He, as I said, is the Director of Evangelization at St. Anthony of Padua. And hear a little more behind the scenes as to how they came into the process that they're using now and what they're learning from it. So let's go there now. All right, I'm here with Mike Gomer Gormley.
All the names.
Officially, and so good to see you, brother. Haven't seen you in a while. You're part of one of our learning communities, but I've been following you on one of your many podcasts or video casts. But I'll tell people about those later.
Nice. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it has been a hot minute, hasn't it?
It has. It's been a while. But you are at St. Anthony of Padua in the greater Houston area.
Yep.
And we just showed your pre-flight video, which I said SpaceX might want to borrow that for the first lunar orbit. But tell us a little bit about that process. What went into that, and how was it received?
Yeah, so one of the big things that I always want to remind our parishioners and people who see that insane video is we are operating under presidential guidelines, CDC guidelines, Governor of Texas guidelines, county judge guidelines, and archdiocesan guidelines. And so, and the demands and expectations and random comments from our parishioners. So you're trying to juggle and judge all of these different things. And then you get experts who are contradictory, especially about masks. Then you get your archbishop writing letters to priests and to the faithful about what are we going to do? The governor opens everything up. One of the things that we heard so often was, if Home Depot can do it, why can't we? And I always remind people, because people who might be zealous about DIY, but not like they're not religiously zealous. And so we have to do our best to protect people who maybe shouldn't come to church, but want to and desire it. And maybe they're elderly and it's their only community or whatever it might be. So we wanted to make sure that our guidelines, though pretty in-depth, was as thorough as needed to, one, have our church as clean as possible, right? Which means as safe as possible, but to let the people know that like this is still, it's not business as usual, right? We are coming back in this really restricted time. So we had weekly or daily 2-hour plus planning meetings where we're trying to wrestle, because every day new things are coming out, and our archdiocese is in Harris County where Houston is, but we're in Montgomery County, which is, a different judge makes different guidelines. And that judge himself up here in Mo County is also a pastor of a local church. But a lot of people in our community just here, churches are open, everything. So there's a lot of, I say all that because there's a lot of expectations you're trying to manage. And people are coming at you from the spectrum of this is a hoax. The vaccine itself is a hoax. The quarantine guidelines are an infringement on your freedom. How dare you tell me to wear a mask? All the way to the other side of how dare you encourage people? How dare you open the doors? How dare, so you have that whole spectrum. So our whole process was to help govern expectations as much as possible. We are returning, but it ain't going to be normal. You probably can't go 2 weekends in a row because judging from the volume of emails, we're going to pack the house, And so we began going through it with all the different guidelines that we had, and we carefully measured everything out. I don't know about y'all. When I was growing up, we had a saying, never trust a church with padded pews. Well, our church has padded pews, and we just totally upgraded all the fabric and everything. So how do you sanitize a pew? Well, if people bring their Clorox wipes, they're going to destroy the pews, the fabric, but also the finish and all that stuff. So we had to come up with a spray solution that we didn't know, like 24 hours before we opened the doors, we didn't know if we could have access to it. A wonderful company, a local company out here in Conroe, they said yes, and they were able to get their employees out. But these were decisions that some churches didn't have to make because they had all wooden pews. But these are all the minutia that we're trying to cover. So we have a wonderful online registration system. Our entire database from, money collection, student registrations is all online. And so we have, and it's all remote, servers, nothing's housed locally. And it's called Planning Center. And they have built into it functionality to do online registration and ticketing, even if you don't charge any money. So we mapped out our thing. How many people can we have in the pews with social distancing? 350 at our large church. Sanctuary holds about 1,400 plus. We capped it, rearranged chairs, rearranged pews, did what we could do, trained our ushers, which were staff members, and they were a limited staff member pool, and then began our procedures that you saw for the Flying Padua Airlines. This is how you board and all that stuff. So it was complicated. It was really complicated.
I just want to see in your next one, I want to see you standing in the aisle giving these kind of signals to people.
I made that joke so many times. When I was walking with the people, I was like, okay, we're going to begin boarding. Please have your tickets ready. They were like, oh. And I would say Padua Air. Oh, they would laugh. Gen Xers love Padua Air.
I think you're right in that we're dealing with people all across the spectrum as to levels of concern, levels of their own personal safety, what's safe for them, levels of from paranoia to hoax in people's perception of it. And I think you've really addressed that across the spectrum well. One thing I want to point out to parishes that are watching is when you hear him say our church seats 1,500, don't immediately tune out and think this doesn't relate to me.
Right.
Whatever the size of your church, you're going to probably need at some point a scheduling system. I was listening to a podcast yesterday about a company that built a scheduling app for restaurants, but now they're converting it to every kind of business because you will probably need to schedule online going to a small retail store. I mean, it's just going to become a way of life for a season at least that we are at, and we may come back to eventually. We really don't know. So listen and think about how you could scale these things to your parish.
And I would say it actually, for those of you in smaller parishes, it would work smoother in smaller parishes because once you like, what is that line? Quantity is a quality all of its own. It involves a whole new set of headaches. And so, when we had lower mass attendance, so we had daily masses and stuff, we only needed 1 or 2, maybe 3 ushers overall to help with the flow. So during daily mass, we don't have people register ahead of time. Sunday masses, we ask that you register ahead of time, and we have all of our masses open. 5 o'clock Saturday night, 7, 9, 11, Spanish mass at 1, and then 6 p.m. It's a lot of masses. It's a big mass schedule. And we have a maximum of 350 at each mass. That's what we can see before we have to turn people away. So we just want to control expectations. Like a lot of churches did first come, first serve. And we thought, where do we want the fight to be? Someone at home being like, oh, they already have 350, or someone at the front door being like, but we've been waiting out here for 30 minutes and everyone, so the scheduling apps relieve a lot of tension. So when the bad news comes on Saturday at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. when they're signing up, oh, everything's taken. Okay. You're managing their frustration a lot better as well. So.
And then you had a standby line for people who didn't register or didn't know about it. And what, as far as your capacity, social distancing, and what actually you had, give us the ratio there.
Yeah, so standbys, we probably had at any given, so at any mass of our fuller masses, so none of our masses maxed out. None of them hit 350, which was kind of shocking to us, both weekends. But last weekend was Mother's Day. We had the largest mass, I think, was about 260. So we had so much headroom. Everyone that came standby got in. We had a little buffer room in case the 350, like we could technically hold like 375. So we kind of figured in that buffer room with standby, especially parishioners might get a little upset or irate, we could help them. So we're just trying to manage expectations. So some masses, 350 capacity, we had 86 people attend. So what we found was people aren't ready, and we thought they were jumping at the bit to. Turns out people who are fine with the quarantine or paranoid or whatever, they're not complaining, when are you going to open the church? They're not sending emails. It's the people on the other side of the spectrum, and they represented a very significant, a very vocal but small minority. And so our daily mass numbers, though, have gone up. They're almost at pre-quarantine levels. So some people feel uncomfortable with the larger crowds that they were assuming were happening on Sundays. So they've been coming to our one daily mass at 9 a.m. And we don't have registration, but we do usher them, socially distance, all that stuff.
Great. Well, looking forward, what are you thinking as you think about how things might progress, preparing for the future? What are the things that your team is talking about right now?
Yeah, so the way our church is currently laid out, our priority is getting to the normalcy of the sacraments, right, and liturgical life and communal life. So that means faith formation type components are going to stay digital. We're not going to worry about people showing up at buildings because honestly, we can't protect them. We can't sanitize at really any significant level if we return to classes. So all of our effort is on the masses. So we have been laying out plans and paying a lot of respect to our county officials and our government and all this stuff, all the legal stuff, as well as our religious side, paying attention to phasing in and making those phases make sense to our parishioners. So for instance, here's the other thing, not crushing the few employees that you have, not making them go to daily mass and every weekend mass, because that's how it kind of is happening, is when the priests are ready to do these things, we're relying on healthy staff members to do it, but the healthy staff members are also doing 3 or 4 other jobs. And so you find that it very easily, and a lot of people have talked about this, you're doing remote work and then you're showing up on site and you've already worked 12 hours in a day and you're doing that 6 or 7 days a week. So we're trying to be super sensitive about how we're utilizing our employees. Going forward, we actually, in that regard, we're taking like a Friday full day off so that no one is working that day, so that everyone can kind of keep that sacred time buffer. We have people with young kids. I have my youngest is 4, my oldest is 9. And so the homeschooling and the health issues and all the things that kind of come around that, we have to be extra sensitive for. So as we do these phased rollouts, we want the phases to make a lot of sense. So everything is happening in the church because we can sanitize that the best. We have a little chapel, but it's all fabric, it's carpet. We ain't sanitizing that. So rolling out adoration, getting caught up on funerals, getting caught up on weddings that have been kind of in limbo. Working with devotion. So the people that they go to morning mass and then they stay afterwards and pray the rosary. We have confessions. This has been going on since before when you could only have 10 people in a room. We've been offering confessions. So after morning mass. So we've been having that going. So, and it's great. It's great. Anyone who needs to go to confession has had access to that for weeks. We also have an online thing called Talk to a Priest, and you just shoot an email. It goes to all the priests, and one of them calls you back on depending on what day it is. So they've had access to pastoral counseling. They've had access to digital faith formation, and they're getting regular access to the sacraments. Maybe it's not every week, but it's as close as we can go. The next step is in June-ish. We're still looking, things up in the air, but bringing in First Fridays and First Saturday devotions, which are pretty big things. First Friday of the month, First Saturday of the month. Bringing those back within the church, contain it, limit it, because now we're going to start doing baptisms. We baptize on a typical Saturday, we're baptizing 10 babies, right? And kids and all that stuff. So we got to get caught up on that, do all that stuff. So we're trying to figure out when we phase to do it so incrementally that we can be smart as a parish. Maybe it's time to retire this. Maybe it's time to phase that out, and a lot of people are kind of grateful for that. But it's also when we phase these things in, how are we doing it to have the least stressful impact on our already existing employees, minimize exposure risks for our elderly and at-risk parishioners, and just gauge stuff like that. So it is hard, but phasing things in, I mean, that phrase has become my favorite because the phase helps you manage expectations, right? So there's a promise out there. So the people who are angry that we don't have adoration or we don't have this or that, the promise is out there. So it kind of calms it. And, there's still plenty of people, well, why not now? This is stupid, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, okay, I hear you. Well, that's why we're getting it going. And it's been positively received so far.
I want to point out a couple of things that you mentioned. One is that, this is a hard time for every church, Protestant, Catholic, regardless, regarding giving. But what I have consistently seen is it is much less hard for parishes that are continuing to do everything they can to serve their people's spiritual needs, to connect with them, whether that's calling them or giving them an opportunity to set up an appointment with the pastor to talk. And those that have continued to do outreach to the community or have launched new outreaches, whether that be delivering food to people at home or partnering with a school to provide meals for kids. People want to give towards things that they see helping their community. So if you're watching this, find whatever creative ways you can to connect with your people, to be there for them, regardless of where you're at in this process. But I did want to circle back to what you said about confessions. And how have you been doing those? How does that work in this environment?
So when we were 10 people only, they would celebrate Mass. And this was even before Masses were public liturgies, right? So the priest would celebrate Mass. We would live stream that. The doors opened at 10 a.m. We had a queue outside. We asked everyone to wear a mask. We had a hand sanitizer station outside. So people could just take a pump, go inside when it was their turn. We had 3 to 5 people. It's never really more than that. 3 to 5 people in a queue lined up. The priest, we moved him out of the confessional into the sanctuary so that they could be spread out, but also not in an enclosed. Our confessionals are like enclosed boxes, and they're not good ventilation. So we set up a screen, we set up chairs, and where the people kneel or sit is 6 feet away from the priest, and where we queue up the line on like the opposite side of the church so they can talk a little louder. And we have music playing in the church so that people can't overhear anything. But we just have one parish staff member who's outside just kind of moderating the line. And one entrance, one exit. And when a person comes out, they send the other person into the queue of like 3 people. So at the most, I think we had about 10 people waiting outside. We had some kids come with sidewalk chalk and measure it out. And it was a cute little fun thing to get them out of the house. And, they're drawing it and all that stuff. And so what you said is absolutely true. We're blessed to have a food pantry, and we have never served more families. I think now we've rivaled Harvey Relief, because we were a main institution for Harvey Relief in our area. I think we've eclipsed that. Hundreds and hundreds of meals a week, of groceries a week, and our parishioners are responding. We send out a notification, hey, we have these public bins that people drop their food in. Some are on wheels so they can roll it out to their car and dump it in and go. And we, every day, like an hour before, we'll clear out all of our shelves. And it's a large facility. Clear out all the shelves, and then they'll fill them all back because another truckload of stuff have come in. It's amazing.
It is. And it's so simple. And it has really 3 payoffs. One is the people that are giving the food get blessed by being able to help others. The people that receive the food get blessed. And then the whole church gets to hear a story of how we're helping the community, and it really affects everybody's life.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Hey, thank you so much for your time. It's good to see you. Good to catch
good to see you
up.
too.
And look forward to talking in the future and seeing as things change, how you guys are adapting. And we'll look forward for your next video for the pre-flight.
Yeah. Hopefully soon.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right, take care. Yeah, God bless.
All right, lots there, right? And some of our interviews today are going to be a lot more detail oriented than we typically get into, just because we're all dealing with details right now, right? We're dealing with details on cleaning the parish and people coming into our offices and all kinds of things. I want to answer a few questions that we had regarding Mike's interview. One was, why did they go with Planning Center? I believe they were already using Planning Center for some other aspects of it. You can schedule volunteers through Planning Center. Has a great relationship database management system. It also has a giving system. I'm not sure about Sign Up Genius or other systems like that. But another question people had was, what about people that don't sign up, that don't know about it? And if you heard Mike say they had a separate line for people that didn't register, all those people were able to get in. But you could also have an overflow room just in case for people who didn't register. And hopefully over time, people will learn that this is required, registration is required. But always try to accommodate those who didn't know the best that you can. What about people who don't have online access, who aren't on their computers? I would encourage you sending out some big postcards, like promotional postcards like we get in our junk mail to all your parishioners. Just as many points of contact as you can have with people. It helps reinforce the information. So yes, I would do a video. I would send out an email blast through Flocknote or whatever you use for that. And then I would do a mailer that goes out to everyone that helps them understand what to expect. Is there music at your liturgies? As you'll hear, some parishes are doing music, some aren't. This really has more to do with the regulations of your diocese or your city. You'll have to check on that for yourself. The registration system they used, again, was Planning Center. There's a link in the chat window here, but there'll also be a link in the email that you receive tomorrow. Also, there was a question about the spray solution for cleaning the fabric on the pews. And there will be a link to that company in the email that you receive tomorrow as well. Also, I heard a few of you may have had some audio problems with the webinar right now. Just encourage you to hang in there, and you will get a link tomorrow. We'll make sure all that's fixed in the YouTube video that you get a link to tomorrow. I want to touch on the last thing that he mentioned, and that was reaching out to the community, collecting food and giving away food in the community. I talked about this in our last webinar, but I just want to remind you again, this is an incredible opportunity for the church to be the church to your city. In a way, historically, that we are the church is that we help those on the margins, we help those in need. And it's an incredible way to bless the people of your city. I like to say that good works create goodwill, which opens the door for the good news. Another thing that it does, it gives your parishioners a way to be involved in helping in such a time of need. And then your whole parish gets to celebrate what you're doing to contribute to people's needs at this time. I'll share with you what a parish in Los Angeles is doing here. This is St. Lawrence of Brindisi in Compton, California. They're part of our LA Parishes Learning Community. And this is Father Matt Elshoff on the far right here. This is doing a prayer walk around and through their community. But they're also doing a meal distribution daily, almost 700 meals a day. And listen, this is not a huge parish. This is in Compton and LA. The food is being provided by the city of Los Angeles, and volunteers from the parish and the community help distribute the food. So I want to encourage you in reaching out to your communities, find out who you can partner with that's already doing this. And that is a great benefit in a couple of ways. One is they may provide all the resources. It may take zero budget from you to do this. For instance, with St. Lawrence of Brindisi, the city of Los Angeles is providing all of the food. Literally all they have to do is open their parking lot, set up tables, and provide volunteers. But this also gives people in the community that aren't a part of your parish a chance to serve alongside with your parishioners, where they build relationships with your parishioners, and they might realize, hey, this is a group of great people doing great things. I think I'd like to find out more about who they are. So again, I think at this time, we've got to continue to be the church helping those in need. And I will say this is not why you should help those in need, but I will say this. When I talk to parishes around the country, I see everything from parishes who have shut the doors and locked up and said, we'll be back whenever things are normal, all the way to parishes that are doing everything they can do to continue to reach their parishioners. They're doing online small groups, they're doing online sacramental prep, they're helping through outreach, through giving meals or food, or calling people that are homebound to see if they need anything. And I will say that I have talked to many parishes and Protestant churches that are operating as much as they can and reaching out to the community, and their giving has not changed during this time. People want to give to a place that is active and engaging and that is there for them, but also a place that is helping those that maybe they can't help. People are looking for a place to give at this time. They want to help those in need. Could your parish be that place? We've talked about before that people right now, they don't want to give to institutions, they want to give to a cause. And are you helping that cause? Just something to consider. All right, we're going to go now to our conversation with Ron Swoboda. Ron is at St. Ignatius of Loyola in Spring, Texas, and he is the director of operations. And this is another parish that's in one of our learning communities. And he's going to talk to us in detail about how they are doing Mass. They're doing another level of protocol coming into Mass. They're actually taking people's temperatures. And he'll talk about that. And then he's also going to talk a little bit about how they are operating in their offices, because a few of you emailed in some questions about that. So let's go there now. All right, Ron, thanks for joining us. And I know this is something that you in the team there at St. Ignatius of Loyola have been working on for a few weeks. Actually, when we were in our learning community, your pastor was in meetings, and you've been planning for this. Last weekend was your big opening. And first, just start by telling us how you communicated this with the parish and the public.
But John, for us and our community, what we have found is the communication has been the biggest piece. We have a couple of methods for communication. Flock notes has been our primary. People can self-sign up for the flock notes. We encourage that. We're always advertising to sign up and join flock notes on our live stream broadcasts. We also use an email blast that we communicate with all of our ministries to. And we also use, through Dynamic Catholic, an app that we can communicate and send information to everybody who signed up for the app. So all of this information and opening up our modified Mass schedule, all of that has been communicated in writing through multiple means. We also have it on our website.
Mm-hmm. And so as you got the word out there, you prepared for it, what were some of the concerns that you had as you were preparing ahead of time?
Well, I think they're concerns that all of us are seeing and facing right now. Our biggest concern is for our at-risk population. We've got so many people, like I'm sure many other parishes do. It seems like the at-risk population are pre-Vatican II. They are so ingrained in, we are going to Mass every Sunday. God love them and God bless them. We want them here. But this is not necessarily the time for them to be at Mass. So that at-risk population has been one of our greatest concerns in keeping people safe, and in opening and making sure that those people and anyone else who's not comfortable with the mass, are not comfortable being in public right now, that they do feel safe coming to mass.
So you prepared, and you prepared for numbers. You weren't quite sure what the turnout was going to be. But before we get to that, tell us just what it looked like for people that came to mass. What was their experience, and how did you guide them?
We had to lay off or furlough 80% of our staff when all of this happened. We brought back staff. Job duties are different, including scheduling on Sunday. We're in a time period right now where we are all hands on deck anytime there is a liturgical celebration, whether it be mass, reconciliation, wedding, or funeral. All staff is available and ready to help and be our hospitality team at this point. So with staff being there, we trained everyone. Specifically for mass, our doors for mass open 30 minutes but prior to the mass beginning. People are allowed to start lining up. We do not open the doors. They have to line up outside the parish, outside the doors, and they line up going down the ramps to our exits to our east and west. We have markings every 6 feet so that they know how far apart to stay. As we open the doors, we have staff people, hospitality ministers there to open the doors for them. They're not touching the handles. They're not grabbing hold of anything to get in. They enter the church. We have a series of 3 stations, essentially, before you even get to the church. As soon as you enter the door, we take your temperature. Anybody whose temperature is 99.9 or above, they're not allowed to come into mass. The next station is hand sanitizing. We have bottles of hand sanitizer, and we spray into the people's hands, and they sanitize their hands right there in the narthex. The third station is we offer them a disposable worship aid. Once they get that worship aid, then they come to the entrance of the church, and they are allowed to go and enter into the nave of the church itself. The pews in our church, we have marked them every 6 feet so that when people do go in and find a place to sit, they know exactly how far apart they need to be. So if it's individual seating, it's real easy. You sit every place that there's a marker. It got a little tricky when we had more than one, or when we have a family come in, because when people sit at the first 6 foot marker, then we have to skip the next 6 foot marker and go to the third 6 foot marker to keep that at least 6 foot distancing in the pews.
And so you had the stations of the COVID that they went through.
That's correct.
There was temperature, hand sanitizing. They had to have a mask on, right?
They have to have masks on, correct. I did leave that out. Before they come into the church to get their temperature taken, they do have to be wearing masks, and those masks have to stay on for the entire mass. That makes receiving communion a whole different experience, let's say.
Well, before we get to that, this is leaders that are watching this. They're going to have to deal with real life issues.
Yes.
2 questions. Did you have anyone who refused or argued with you about the mask? And did anyone have a temperature?
The mask issue, we have had some people verbalize their opinions on wearing masks, and that's perfectly acceptable. And our hospitality members, who again are our staff right now, handled it very well. The obligation for Sunday Mass is waived at this moment. And if you're not comfortable being here, and if you're not willing to follow the rules, the safety rules that we have in place for our environment, we certainly invite you to continue to watch us online, to stream our Mass. We haven't had anyone, once it was explained to them, not put their mask on and come in. Again, a few people have opinions, and that's okay, as long as they choose to follow the rules.
Yeah, I think Costco, someone said, if you're going to require me to wear a mask, then I'm refusing to come in. And they said,
Okay.
exactly. That's
Yes.
exactly what we want you to do.
We have,
Did
we have the same stance.
anyone have a temperature?
We have. We've had a couple of people that have had temperatures that were above 99.9. And again, very pastorally, very professionally, politely, we explained to them, and I'm sorry, your temperature is above 99.9. And at this point, we're going to have to ask you to not come into the church, and please feel free to watch our stream from home. We did tell them, that, with it being above 99.9, we recommend that they monitor it themselves. But, again, we're not giving any direction other than here's what your temperature is, and please continue to monitor it before you come back in.
So once the mass began, did you have singing? What was the length of the mass? And share with us how people received the Eucharist.
The length of our mass, the body of the mass itself definitely we have not altered our length. We do have singing. We do encourage singing. Again, everybody's wearing their masks. So the actual liturgical celebration, the length has not changed for us. The part that is a bit more lengthy and does make the mass run a little bit longer, even with fewer population attending, is the way that communion is handled. It does take a little bit more time, and we certainly do not rush people through communion. Again, all of our aisles leading to the altar have 6-foot markers in them. We specifically and individually are doing communion section by section, pew by pew. So it does take a little bit of time. Now, again, there's not as many people in the pews, so it does flow, but it does take a little bit of time. We have our ushers, our hospitality ministers, and again, at this moment, for the most part, that is our staff, inviting people to come forward, pew by pew. As the people move forward to the priest, one of the rules that is heavily communicated, again, before you come to Mass and even as communion begins, is not to remove your mask in front of the priest. Here in the Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston, the Cardinal has deemed that only priests can hand out communion. No deacons, no acolytes, no Eucharistic ministers of Holy Communion. Only the priests. So we do not lower our masks in front of the priests, but we instruct people not to lower their masks until they've received the communion in their hand. We have another hospitality minister 6 to 8 feet away and guide that person away from the priest, at which time they lower their mask, receive the communion, raise their masks, turn around and go back up the pew. Again, in our particular church, we've had to really study our communion flow. Our church seats 1,700 people. So we had to study our communion flow to make sure that at no time do we have people coming out for communion and then people coming back up the aisle after receiving. So again, that's why we have gone to just section by section, so that we have no counterflow in the aisles at any time.
As you said, this is all hands on deck for staff, for any hospitality or ushers that you can get involved. And I want to say to parishes out there, I've talked several times about this is also a time that's a time of opportunity. And one big opportunity you have is if one reason you don't have a lot of hospitality people available right now is because they are in the at-risk age group, this is an incredible opportunity for you to invite younger people to be a part of hospitality. Send out a call to them, tell them we need you. We need people to welcome others here, to help guide them, and you are the safest for this right now. as far as being in Mass and receiving it. So use this as an opportunity to build your hospitality ministry, because this isn't going to change overnight. We're going to have guided, limited Mass for the foreseeable future, and it may even go back to closing the church again. We don't know. We really don't know. So plan for the long haul in this. Don't just think you're going to wait this out for a few months and just get by. Plan to do this well. So the other thing, Ron, that we talked about is that you were prepared for a big turnout, if necessary. And as I've talked with other pastors that have begun to open, I think we had this idea that people have been so eager to come back to Mass that once we open the doors, we're going to fill up the church and we're not going to know how to manage them. You have a church that seats 1,700 normally. You said with social distancing, it would seat 425. And then you had enough overflow for another 1,000.
Yes.
But you ended up with about 10%, right, of what you typically would have. Is that correct?
Correct. Our largest Mass this past weekend had about 150 people in attendance. We were prepared for the 425 was 25% capacity in our church. We have our community building, our community center, which is right next to our church. That I typically stadium style seating, I can seat another 1,000 people in there. So we anticipated being able to put at least 300 people in there. Our next smaller community gathering space is the next building over. And in that building, I could have probably put another 100 to 150. And then on the far end of our campus, I have yet one more gathering space where I could have probably put another 150. So we could have gotten to a total 1,000 people at one time here on campus for Mass. Certainly, we're not seeing those numbers right now. Our normal, before coronavirus happened, we would have anywhere from 150 to 200 people coming to our daily Mass. Those numbers, now that we are reopened for daily Mass, are hovering in about the 50 range. So our daily Mass is dropped by 2/3 compared to what it normally was.
So I would just say parishes out there that are reopening, if you're worried about scheduling or having people reserve spots for Mass, that we may get to that, but I would venture to say right now, there's enough people that are still cautious that you're probably going to be able to easily manage the numbers that are coming your way. It's probably not for everybody, but from what I'm hearing, that's true for most. Any other thoughts about the Mass, about what went well, or what you might suggest to parishes that are still planning?
Father Norbert has done a great job, again, since the Sunday obligation has been waived at this moment. If you do see that you're having a lot of people come on Sunday and it's overwhelming, encourage people to come to your daily Mass. Again, it's not required that they be at the Sunday Mass. If you can open and your daily Mass can hold more than what you have coming, encourage people to come to that Mass. We have done that. We have seen some that were at Sunday and then still come to daily, but many of our people, we have seen that they are only coming to one, maybe two Masses a week, where they used to come to every daily Mass and every Sunday Mass. So they have changed their patterns. With higher populations, and when we get to that point, we'll probably speak to that more and encourage that more, so that if someone's not comfortable coming to a larger crowded Mass, to come to the daily Mass.
And you asked them to stay until the very end, right? And they would be dismissed in an orderly manner. So
Yes.
Another success that we've had in the midst of this is we've actually had people stay through the announcements before leaving. So congratulations.
Yes. we do dismiss. It's very similar to the communion process. We ask everyone, we only sing one verse of the hymn, the exit hymn, and then we ask everyone to be seated, and just like communion, we dismiss section by section, pew by pew.
Great. Well, one other thing I want to ask you about is your offices have reopened and are kind of in a process of opening more. Tell us some of the practices that you are following with your offices.
So here in Texas, we're allowed to open at this 25% capacity. Starting this next Monday, we're going to be open to a 50% capacity. This week, while our offices are open and our staff is back in the office, we have not really scheduled any office meetings. We have people that are dropping by. We're having meetings or conversations with those people. Starting next week, we will start scheduling some office expanded hours and being able to schedule office meetings. But we're following the same procedures for entering our office that we do for entering the church for Mass. In order to come in, you have to wear a mask. Immediately upon coming in, before you get to our receptionist desk, there's a hand sanitization station. It's touchless. Run their hand right under it, and they sanitize their hands. We've installed a sneeze guard, a protective screen for our receptionist. So any face-to-face contact that she has, she's wearing a mask and she's behind a sneeze guard. When a staff member is notified that there's a visitor there for them, before they enter into the lobby to meet with whoever their visitor is, we as staff have to put our masks on. When we go to our office or to our meeting space, when we get to that meeting space, masks stay on and office doors get closed while the meeting is going on. Once the meeting has ended, we escort the person back to the front. They exit. We then have sanitizer, disinfectant in our offices and our meeting spaces, and all spaces must be sanitized immediately at the end of the meeting. That way the space is prepared for whoever does encounter the space the next meeting.
Sounds safer than going to my grocery store, that's for sure.
Much.
What about mail contributions, all of that? How are you handling that?
So when our mail comes in, our postal carrier, again, as long as they're wearing a mask, they bring the mail into the office. We have had postal carriers that didn't want to put a mask on or have a mask. So we do have a box outside, and we have them just drop the mail in the box, and then we retrieve it. Once it's retrieved, we spray it with sanitizer, disinfectant, and let it sit for a few minutes before it's sorted and put into the boxes.
And same with cash or checks?
Our contributions, when we are processing contributions, we are wearing gloves, disposable gloves. We do spray the money. Unfortunately, you could spray all you want to on money. It's not going to get clean. So we do wear gloves when we're processing our collections.
Yeah. Great. Well, it sounds like you guys are doing a great job. You said that everything went as planned on Sunday, and I know that you're prepared for another week coming up here, and we'll just check back with you. Thank you for taking the time to share with us and all these other parishes that aren't opening yet what you're learning, and hope to hear more from you in the future.
Happy to do it, John. Thank you.
All right, a lot of information there, also a lot of questions, and we're answering some of them. Some of them I'm going to get back to Ron with, but also going to respond to some of them in the email coming out tomorrow. I do want to address some of the questions we got before we go to our last speakers here. The first thing I want you to remember is all these people are saying that they did not reach capacity. So I would say when you initially open, even though your numbers are going to be low as far as what you're allowed to have, it seems like you're probably not going to reach capacity just because of people's caution. Of course, that depends on where you are, I'm sure. But none of these parishes reached capacity in any of their masses at 25%. Secondly, I got some questions about what do they mean by a worship aid. It's simply a piece of paper that has the readings for the day printed onto it and the words for the songs. It's just a disposable kind of program for the Mass for that day. So that's what most parishes are using that I know of that are opening up for Mass. I got a question about what about people who will not comply? I think Ron said it's just, there's no tolerance. It's kindly, gently, lovingly. If you won't comply by these standards, we can't allow you into the Mass. And I think they said they had one person, but after they talked to them, that it was fine. I would provide masks if people don't have them. Did the celebrant wear a mask? That depends on your diocese, your city, whatever the current protocol is for where you live. And there are so many things involved in this. It's your state government, it's your city government, and it's your diocese. So those are all things that you have to take into consideration. Someone asked, what about staff pushback regarding helping out on the weekends with hospitality? I would just say this, if it's pushback because they don't feel safe, that's okay. We want to accommodate people at their different levels of concern or safety. If it's pushback because they say, well, I'm not a hospitality volunteer, that's not my job. Listen, this is a time when anyone's lucky to have a job. So if people on your staff are simply not willing to transition to where they are needed right now, we are in a mission critical mode. And I think one thing we learn at this time is who's really a part of our mission and who isn't. So those are strong words, but one, I would say the biggest challenge we face in helping parishes at Parish Catalyst is pushing them towards making sure they have a team of people that support their mission and are enthusiastic about their mission. If we keep people on board who are not, we will never accomplish our mission without a team that believes in our mission. So if it's a safety issue, accommodate them. If it's not, they might need to consider that this might not be the best place for them to serve. And then what about at-risk people? Obviously, we can't force them to not come. I would consider having an overflow room that is specifically for at-risk people, where it has higher safety measures, they feel safer, and they can be in one place together. I know that restaurants, grocery stores, a lot of places are accommodating elderly and people that are at risk, either letting them shop at a specific time or giving them a specific place to be. So consider doing that with your parish. We're running a little late, and so we're going to skip one conversation that was just brief with Father Steve DeBrocchi from St. Thomas the Apostle in Billings, Montana. But I do want to say they're an example of how we're all coming at this from different places. They've been open since late April. Their community does not require masks of people. They request it, but it's not legally required in their city. And they encourage it, but they don't require it. And as he said, you know, in Montana, people just have a little more frontier spirit of independence, and you can't always convince them that this is the best idea. But because it's not legal standards for their city, for their community, they're not requiring it. I want to share with you some ways that we could help out real quick. We are going to continue on doing what we do as Parish Catalyst, in some ways virtually and in some ways in person as we are able to. I want to share with you a few ways that we are doing that. This is directly from our website here. But one is through our webinars, as you are a part of right now. And I want you to know that we have a webinar library. This is our 19th webinar. But we have a webinar library that covers everything from staff health and harmony to growing volunteers, generosity, excelling on Sundays, leadership development, hospitality, multicultural parishes, reaching millennials. So I encourage you to go to our website and register for that library. You'll also find out about upcoming webinars that way. Our on-sites, are where we come to your parish and work with you and your team and your volunteers and your parishioners to help further your mission. We do it in different areas like growing volunteers, thriving small groups, hospitality, community impact, or we'll customize it to whatever your vision is for your parish. So be sure to check that out. And I think we're going to begin doing these virtually as well. So if you'd like to have a weekend retreat virtually with your staff and key volunteers, we'd love to facilitate that. And lastly is our learning communities, which we are beginning to focus more towards dioceses. So if you're at a diocese or an archdiocese and you're watching this, we would love to talk to you about doing a learning community of 10 parishes in your diocese that last for 18 months, and it helps those parishes grow a discipleship culture, and that in every mass, in every program, in every ministry, they are strategically making disciples. And we'd love to talk to you about how we could help you to do that. Our mission at Parish Catalyst is to help and encourage Catholic leaders to think creatively, act courageously, and renew the church. And I want to highlight some creative things that pastors are doing and parishes are doing right now. The first is I got an email from Father Bill Easterling, who's at Sacred Heart in Covina, California. They were in one of our learning communities, and they are preparing for drive-in parking lot mass, because California has just extended their stay-at-home order until, I think, August. They are realizing that their next step is not even going to be people coming into the church. It's going to be people just being able to travel and be outside. So they have purchased a short-range FM transmitter. It was less than $200. And they're going to have people come and park in the parking lot of the parish. They're going to set up a stage with an altar, and they're going to have mass in the parking lot, and it's going to be transmitted to people in their cars through an FM transmitter. That is creative, and that's so cool to see. And then this one I'm going to share with you, you may have already seen online. This is Father Tim Pelk, and he is at St. Ambrose Parish in Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan. And sorry, I kind of blew the punchline here. He, for Easter, decided that he wanted to find a creative way to connect with families and to bless their Easter baskets. So he talked to the powers that be and even to some doctors to find out if he could put holy water in a squirt gun and they could drive up and he would bless their Easter baskets through the car window with holy water. And what a creative and courageous thing to do. And people loved it. It has gone viral. It's all over the world now. But it also, as if you're successful on the internet, you at some point become a meme. And so he has become famous in more ways than just this. He's been included in The Good, the Bad, and the Holy Spirit, a new movie coming out, I would imagine. Pandemic, You Are Humanity's Last Stand, Father Tim. And then helping firefighters, of course. In Pulp Fiction with Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta. And then lastly, my favorite, in Star Wars. I'm not sure why he's fighting with the stormtroopers, but that's at least he's in the movie, right? But is that not some creative and courageous work by a pastor who said, I just want to connect with my people more? And people love that. So we encourage you to continue to be creative and let us know about those things. We'd love to hear about them and share them with others. All right, we're going to go to one last conversation. It's only about 10 minutes. This is with another parish that is not fully open, that wanted to create kind of a hybrid way to connect with their parishioners. So as you'll hear, what they've done is they do online mass, and then they invite the parishioners to come to the parish to receive communion outside of the church on the sidewalk in front of the parish. So this is Father Ernest Bayer and Nissa Broadman. She's the director of parish ministries at Holy Name Catholic Church in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Let's go there All right, Father Ernest and Nissa, thank you for joining me today. And I loved this idea when I first heard about it of a hybrid between virtual and in person with Mass and the Eucharist. How did you come up with that idea? What was that conversation like?
Well, the diocese had told us that we could maybe have 10 people or 10 groups of people in the parish at one time, and that would have meant scheduling everybody. And we got to thinking about everybody trying to get on the schedule and everybody trying to get in for Mass and how complicated that would be, and also cleaning the pews afterwards. And we were struggling with the idea of limiting the number of people coming into the church for Mass. And so we started brainstorming it, and we came up with one of our goals was, how could we make this available for everybody, even though we can only let like 10 people in the church? The county restricts us to 10 people in the church at any one time. So we started brainstorming that, trying to be more inclusive. And at first we came up with an idea of everybody could come after. We would do the live stream Mass and encourage people to watch it at home or wherever, and then drive to the church, and we would give them communion in their cars at the curbside after Mass. And then we hit on the idea, which we think was much better, to actually let them process down the sidewalk in front of our church to a central location, to the main entrance of the church, where we set up an altar. And Nissa and I were there giving out communion. We had candles and the statue of Jesus and a crucifix and a nice altar. And they came from either side in front of the church, walking down the sidewalk, separated by 6 feet. We put lines on the sidewalk so that they would be 6 feet apart. But that was a way that we could make it available for everybody and anybody who wanted to come, and they didn't have to sign up. And so people did. They came, and they seemed to really appreciate the opportunity to receive the Eucharist on Mother's Day. But the staff came up with the idea, brainstorming it together.
Nissa, you started with this idea of it serving people in their cars. What really pushed you to take it a little further and create an opportunity for people to come up to the church from their cars and receive it?
Well, we kind of went back and forth. We thought about logistics. How are people going to park? Are they going to pull in and out? We thought about seemed a little bit less reverent. And so we were brainstorming several ways. How do we make this available to all, still be outside? And we thought, well, let's do a procession to the front of the church, have people park, walk up, allow them a few moments to prepare for communion while they're waiting or walking up. And then also being able to take the moment to either go into the church. We allowed the chapel to be open and also the main church, so they could go in and pray afterwards. So we gave them an opportunity to go in. We had guides there. We had other hosts that were guides outside telling them that we were limiting it to 10 people and that we asked them to wipe their areas after they were finished. And then a lot of people took that opportunity, but some people didn't. And we wanted them to just be able to have that and a more reverent way of receiving the Eucharist than just sort of a drive-through.
And some people still received it in their cars, right?
There was a couple elderly that just they would have been either we probably in normal circumstances would have walked up to them in the pew. So instead I walked up to their car, and that went really well. And I think that they were so appreciative, and the reverence didn't seem less reverent, but allowing people the opportunity to get out of their car and walk just seemed like it was more you're preparing to receive the body of Christ than a hamburger.
Mm-hmm. I love that you offered people several options. That one thing we talked about earlier is that people at our parishes are at all different places of comfort with this and all different places of fear. And I think it's important for us to offer people different options based on how comfortable they feel or how safe they feel. What were some of your concerns leading up to it? And then how did those play out in the actual experience itself? Is what happened.
I would say maybe the first concern, at least in my mind, was that, after 6 or 7 weeks of not receiving, we might have lots of people coming and trying to manage the crowd, and because the county even said when they saw our plan they said, well, can you limit it to 10 people on the sidewalk at any one time? And I'm like, okay, well, I'll announce that, please, only 10 people on the sidewalk at once. Well, we didn't have to worry about that. Most we had maybe on the sidewalk at one time would be like a family of 6 or something like that. They came gradually because we gave them an hour after Mass, and some were there waiting right after Mass, and the rest of them just straggled in over the course of an hour, driving up or biking in, and it wasn't hard to control the crowd. It was gradual, it was peaceful. People did not feel rushed. And I would say most people did sit on the grass or go into the church afterwards and spend some time in prayer. So yeah, it was much more peaceful and relaxing than I anticipated.
Nissa,
Weather
what
was beautiful
concerns
too.
that you had that turned out different than you expected?
No, I mean, I think you hope for more people. Obviously, your desire is that. But I'm just very aware that not everybody's ready or willing to come to the church or any sort of gathering, even though we met the restrictions at this time. So I feel, my hope was to have the front lawn packed. But I also think that my perception was probably a little bit skewed because the entire world is in this new state that not everyone's comfortable yet with that. But I think that we were able to maintain lower numbers might actually help us to encourage people to come, that it is a safe way we're, distributing communion.
Yeah, and I think you said it's about 30% of what you would normally have for that Mass, which I think is higher than maybe what other parishes are even experiencing that are opening their doors, because it's a little safer, less threatening experience. And you said that people kind of manage their own space, but you really could put circles on the ground just like they do at Target or grocery stores that kind of help people manage their distance with each other if you were concerned about that, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. And I do think it was really good that we had, some guides, some staff members that spoke to people as they came up, said that the lines were there so they could space themselves, but also telling them that opportunities and kind of the parameters around entering the church. I think that was really successful, but we could, definitely put areas like where a chair is maybe sat outside, rather than just the benches available. Marking them and also having them sanitized, that might make people feel more comfortable and know where an appropriate place to stand would be.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me what people's responses were after 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Nissa, what did you hear from people about what it meant to them?
So, some people, instead of saying amen because they were so excited and so grateful, they said thank you, and then said amen. They were just overwhelmed. There was a lot of tears, and just people were so grateful. I had a woman in my small group that shared how it brought her to tears, but also made her weak. That she realized that she wants to be a living tabernacle because of this. And I just thought that was so moving, and just so grateful. Everyone was just happy to receive the body of Christ.
What do you think is next? As you look forward, we talked about how this next weekend you're going to do basically the same thing. What have you been talking about as a next step for your parish?
Well, I guess we're hoping that we'll be able to have more than 10 people in the church. And when the county relaxes the rules a bit more, then we'll probably consider scheduling people and inviting people to the Mass. I could see doing both, live streaming the Mass, having a minimum number of people in there, and still going out afterwards and giving communion to everybody who wants to come, who wasn't on the list. I think that's how I would see it. We haven't talked about that as a staff yet, but we're, liturgical ministers are getting more involved, but we haven't opened it up to the whole parish to actually be in the church during Mass.
Very good. Well, I was excited to hear about this when you first mentioned it, because as we challenge leaders to think creatively, that's what you did, and it impacted people's lives. And I look forward to hearing how you continue to think creatively in the midst of all of this. And I do think, if absence makes the heart grow fonder, I think there is some good in this, of it stirring a desire for people to have greater appreciation for the Eucharist and for the
Yeah.
gathering. And we'll see where that goes. But thank you both so much, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
Well, as you can see, there are many different ways to serve our parishioners, either virtually, online, or in person. And we're only limited in some ways by our own creativity and our willingness to think outside of the box and try some different things. One question I received for their interview was, why are they letting people in the church? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of having communion on the sidewalk? They're only letting in 10 people at a time in their county. The regulation right now is no more than 10 people in the church at a time. So they're only letting in up to 10 people. They're wiping down where those people sat before they let others in. So they have ushers and hosts that are monitoring that. They didn't have a ton of people that even wanted to go into the church to pray. There were a few, but they opened it up. So I think one thing we're really afraid of is how many people are going to respond, that we won't be able to manage it. And right now, it seems like the numbers are manageable based on people's concern and kind of self-selecting out of some things. So we ran a little bit over today, but hope you appreciate all the different perspectives and information we were able to get you. We're going to try to get to a lot of your unanswered questions later and through the email. Please look for that tomorrow. And also let us know any webinar ideas that you have that you'd like to see us cover. As things are changing week to week, literally, we're trying to address those things in these webinars, and we hope it's helpful to you. All right, we'll see you next month. Thank you, and God bless.